Today, I want to share with you the gear that I would bring if I was going on my first ever backpacking trip. This is gear that I think is perfect for beginner backpackers, but also includes some options if you prioritize value and ease of use. We're gonna start off by talking about tents, and there's three different kinds of tents out there. There's trekking pole tents, which use the poles that you hike with in order to provide structural stability for the tent. Trekking pole tents are very lightweight, very stormworthy, but might be a little bit difficult for people to figure out if they're used to a more traditional tent. The second kind of tent is a freestanding tent, which is what I have right here behind me. A freestanding tent uses tent poles in order to provide the structure for the tent. A lot of the time you have a mesh inner that the pole is attached to, and then you put a fly on over top of that. Most people are going to be familiar with freestanding tents, and it's going to be a little bit more intuitive when you're setting them up and putting them together. Freestanding tents also generally need fewer tent stakes in order to set them up, which is nice if you're on difficult ground that's either rocky or really hard. The third kind of tent is a semi-freestanding tent. Semi-freestanding tents have a pole structure as well, like a freestanding tent, but it's usually a little bit more minimal. Usually you have to add a few more tent stakes at the foot end of the tent in order to have the tent have full structure. The benefit of semi-freestanding tents is that they're usually a little bit lighter than freestanding tents, but they're not quite as structurally sound as a freestanding tent or even a trekking pole tent. For beginner backpackers, I recommend a freestanding tent just because, like I said, they're gonna be a little bit more intuitive. As well, there's a lot more options available, so you can really find the perfect tent for you. My recommendation is the Naturehike Mongar 2. It's a really robust, easy to use tent. You can set this up pretty easily if you have any familiarity with tents. It's a 2-person tent, which is what I also recommend for people when you're first getting into backpacking, because it's usually light enough that you can go out by yourself if you're going out on a solo mission, or if you're going out with somebody else, then you can share the tent with them. It also has a good amount of space on the inside. You can fit two 25-inch wide pads inside of here, which is the size of pad that you want to be going for if you want to maximize comfort. This isn't the lightest tent out there, and it is fairly bulky, so you're gonna need a decent sized pack in order to fit it inside, but the price is right and it performs really well. For some of the key items, I'm also gonna give you a buy once, cry once option, which allows you to spend a bit more money if you wanna increase the performance of your gear or get something that's a little bit lighter weight. And for the tent alternative, it achieves both. It performs better and is lighter weight. It's the Durston X-Mid 2. It is a trekking pole tent, but it's really easy to set up, and then it's very lightweight and performs phenomenally. If you can wrap your head around using a trekking pole tent, and I recommend it because I've been using trekking pole tents for years now and actually find them easier to set up and quicker to set up than a freestanding tent, then you're gonna get a lot of benefits out of it. For a pack, there's 4 things I think you should really consider when choosing a backpack. The first one being the weight of the pack. If you go into a big box store, a lot of the time you're gonna see a lot of packs that are very heavy, but I recommend looking for a pack that weighs under 1.5 kilograms. At that weight, you're gonna get a really good pack that can carry a ton of weight, has a ton of features, but isn't gonna break your back when you're hiking down the trail. The second consideration is getting a pack that's gonna be able to carry a decent amount of weight comfortably. When you're just getting into backpacking, a lot of the time you're gonna overpack, you're gonna end up with a pack that weighs 30, 40 pounds or even more, and you want a pack that's gonna be able to carry that comfortably. For a pack to carry weight comfortably, you're gonna need a few different things. First of all, definitely get a pack with a hip belt on it, as well as a full frame, and make sure that the hip belt is nice and thick and has a nice stiff foam. When you first try to pack in a store, stiff foam probably won't feel super comfortable, but once you start hiking and allow that foam to kind of contour to your body, the stiff foam is gonna work a lot better than a soft foam that's just gonna collapse and not transfer weight well. And then you're gonna wanna make sure that the pack has load lifters, which are straps that attach the top of the pack to your shoulder straps. And this allows you to transfer weight from your shoulders to your hips a bit more effectively. You wanna be carrying about 60 to 80% of the weight of the pack on your hips, and then the rest on your shoulders. Another factor for being able to carry weight well is getting a pack that fits you well. If the pack doesn't fit well, it's not gonna carry weight well and you're gonna be very uncomfortable on your trips. A key component of that is getting a pack with an adjustable torso. This is the third consideration when getting a pack, and for me is a non-negotiable for beginner backpackers. There's a variety of different mechanisms for how a torso can be adjustable, but it basically moves the shoulder straps up and down so that the pack fits your back and your torso properly. The fourth consideration is access to items and pockets. For beginner backpackers, I think it's important to have a good amount of pockets on your pack so you're not strapping stuff all over it. Hip belt pockets are really nice, and then it's really important, I think, to have side pockets where you can reach water bottles. A lot of packs in the past, they had side pockets where you had to be really flexible or have super long arms in order to reach the water bottle and get it out of the pack. But with modern packs, you have a couple different options for ease of use when it comes to getting water bottles. On Gregory packs, you have side entry, side pockets for getting water in and out. And then on REI packs, you have this secondary pocket that's in front of the side pocket that also makes it really easy to get water. A lot of people might say that you can just use a water bladder, but water bladders are gonna leak eventually, and they're really difficult to get in and out of the pack when you're needing to refill them. My recommendation for a beginner backpack is the REI Flash 55. It basically hits all those points for consideration. It has an adjustable torso on it. It has the really nice side pockets for water bottles. It's quite affordable, going on sale for about $140, $120 if you get lucky. With the ability to dial in the fit of this pack, I've been able to carry over 40 pounds in it, and you're gonna be hard pressed to find a pack that's this light, that's able to carry this much weight effectively, that doesn't cost $500, $600. The buy once, cry once alternative is the Durston Kakwa 55 in either the Ultra Grid or the Ultra version, depending on what your budget is. That pack is just gonna be quite a bit lighter than the REI Flash 55 while still being very functional. The one thing with the Kakwa is that it doesn't have an adjustable torso, so you really have to be making sure that you're getting the fit right. We're getting into the gear that you need for your sleep system when you're backpacking, and I think this is probably the most important pieces of gear that you need to consider, because if you're getting a bad night's sleep when you're out in the backcountry, you're probably gonna hate backpacking. Whereas if you have a really comfortable sleep after hiking all day, then you're gonna wake up refreshed, feeling great, and ready to hike again, and it's gonna make your experience so much better. For a sleeping pad, there's 3 considerations that I want you to be looking at. The first one is the warmth of the pad. And a lot of the time, you're gonna be starting with R value for this, which is a number that pad manufacturers have determined in order to give you an idea of how warm the pad sleeps. The higher the R value, the warmer the pad is supposedly gonna sleep, but don't always trust R values. Companies have started being able to game the system a little bit, and a lot of the time you'll have a pad that has a really high R value, but doesn't sleep nearly that warm once you actually get it out into the field. A good starting point though is to look at the R value and make sure that a pad has an R value of around 5 for any sort of 3-season backpacking. If you're in a really warm climate going out in hot summer conditions, then you can get away with something around 2 to 4 R value, but make sure you're watching and reading reviews from people who have taken the pads out on trips and use them down to their lower limits so you can get an idea if the pad's gonna be warm enough for you. The second consideration is comfort for a pad, and there's a few different things that lead into comfort. The first one is whether you're a back or a side sleeper. If you're a back sleeper, you can kind of get away with any sleeping pad. You're probably gonna be relatively comfortable. But if you're a side sleeper, then like me, then you're gonna need a pad that is comfortable for you while you're laying on your side, which is a little bit more difficult. There's really 3 things to look at for comfort. The first one being the baffling system of the pad. So a lot of time what you'll have is horizontal baffles like on Thermarest pads, vertical baffles like on Exped pads, or this dimpled baffling system where you have raised areas and then lowered areas like on the REI Helix and the Sea to Summit pads. For pressure relief, side sleeping, and comfort, I find that this dimpled baffling pattern works the best. I find that each of these raised areas kind of acts as a little spring that really helps with pressure relief. But the second factor for comfort, the stretchiness of the top material, also plays a really big difference. I've found that pads that have a really stretchy top, like the Thermarest Neoloft sleeping pad, are very comfortable, and it doesn't really matter as much what kind of baffling you have. But with those stretchy materials, you really need to have a thick pad, which is the third factor for comfort. Especially if you're on the heavier side, 200 plus pounds, you're gonna want a pad that's probably at least 4 inches thick. Otherwise, as you're laying on your side, your hip or your shoulder might bottom out the pad and you'll be hitting the ground, which is not only uncomfortable, but can lead to you feeling cold at night. The third consideration is the width of the pad, and for most people out there, you might as well just get a wide 25-inch wide pad. It's gonna be the most comfortable. You're gonna have enough space on the pad in order to move around on it without kind of falling off. My beginner recommendation for a sleeping pad is the REI Helix. This is the most comfortable pad that I've ever used. Comfort's a little bit subjective, and there's definitely some other comfortable pads out there, but this is the one that I get the best sleep on time after time. It's also quite warm for 3-season conditions. It lives up to its R value, and then it packs down really nicely and is not super lightweight, but is lightweight enough that it's not gonna be weighing down your pack. Like with the Flash 55, definitely wait for a sale with this pad. It gets down to about $100, sometimes even less. The buy once, cry once sleeping pad alternative is the Exped Ultra, either 3R or 5R, depending on how much warmth you need. Those pads also live up to their R value. They're quite a bit lighter weight than the REI Helix. They're not quite as comfortable, but still very comfortable for most people. There's 3 parts to a backpacking sleep system, with the second part being the pillow. And there's 3 things I want you to consider when looking at pillows. The first one is the overall size of the pillow. You can get some really tiny pillows that are gonna be very lightweight, but they're probably not going to be that comfortable. The second factor is kind of in line with the size, but it's the height of the pillow. A lot of people probably underestimate the importance of height with a pillow, but especially if you're a side sleeper, you want to be getting a pillow that's tall enough that it's supporting your head and not allowing it to dip down and then put a lot of pressure on your shoulder and arm. The third consideration is having a pillow that can attach to your sleeping pad in some way. If you don't have a pad attachment system, then your pillow, as you toss and turn, is going to be flying all around your tent, and that's going to be really annoying. It's going to wake you up every single time. But if you have some way to attach the pillow to your sleeping pad, then you're not going to deal with that problem, and you're probably not going to wake up nearly as much. There's a bunch of different pad attachment systems, but my personal favorite is a good old strap. You just put this around your sleeping pad and it locks the pillow on and you have no problems. My recommendation for a pillow is the Trekology 2.0. It's very affordable at $20, has a nice size to it, really good baffling so it doesn't really feel like you're laying on a balloon as much, and then is quite soft and stretchy on the top material. It also comes with a pad strap and these little silicone dots in order to keep the pillow locked on your sleeping pad. The one downside with this pillow is that it doesn't have a ton of height to it. So if you do have broader shoulders, then you might want to put either a jacket, a piece of clothing, or a sit pad underneath the pillow in order to raise it up a little bit. The third part of a sleep system is your top insulation. This is what's going to provide a lot of warmth to you when you're sleeping at night. There's really two options for top insulation. You have sleeping bags like I have here, or you have top quilts, which are kind of half sleeping bags. They're basically just blankets with straps that attach them onto your sleeping pad. And there's a couple different benefits and cons with each of these systems. Quilts are going to be much lighter weight, and I find more comfortable for tossing and turning underneath them. It's more like having a blanket at home. Quilts are going to be a little bit less user-friendly because you do need to use those pad straps effectively in order to keep drafts from getting underneath the quilt, whereas sleeping bags are a little bit more turnkey, where you just throw them on your pad and you're good to go. The second thing you need to keep in mind with top insulation is the warmth rating. Most sleeping bags and quilts advertise limit ratings, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you need to know it. A lot of time you have to be digging into the specs in order to get the comfort rating. Most people are going to sleep really comfortably at the comfort rating. If you're like me and you sleep a little bit warm, then you might be a little bit warm at the comfort ratings, and you can get away with sleeping at the limit ratings of sleeping bags and quilts. But make sure that you're getting something that has the kind of rating, probably the comfort rating, that is going to be appropriate for the kind of conditions that you're going out in. My recommendation for top insulation is the Decathlon MT900 sleeping bag. Like I said, sleeping bags are just a little bit more turnkey, even though personally I like quilts quite a bit more just from a weight and comfort factor. The Decathlon bag uses really lightweight materials, tendon shell fabric, and then lightweight down on the inside in order to provide the insulation. And because of that, you get a very lightweight sleeping bag for a very good price. An alternative is the Rockfront quilt system. It's not going to be as intimidating for people as a full-on quilt because you have this sheet that goes onto your sleeping pad and then you zip your sleeping quilt on top of it. And this allows you to have a draft-free experience really easily and then have all the comfort of being able to toss and turn underneath it easily as well. That brings us to the cook system. So the stuff that you're going to use in order to heat up water and make any food that you might need on a backpacking trip. And I recommend getting a canister stove, which involves getting these little canisters that you can pick up at pretty much any outdoor store, which provides the fuel for the little stoves that you then attach to it. My recommendation for a cook system is this Fire Maple stove pot combo. The stove is the Green Peak stove, which has a couple of really good things going for it. First of all, you have a nice wide burner, which provides effective heat transfer to your pot. You also have a little bit of a wind lip on the stove in order to protect the flame from wind. You have good wide arms on the stove in order to provide support for basically any pot out there, and then a piezo igniter if you don't want to use your lighter in order to light your stove. The pot is the Fire Maple petrol pot, which has a heat exchanger on the bottom, which makes it really effective at getting heat from the stove. With this pot, you're going to boil water faster and you use less fuel. It's also a really nice size that allows you to fit both your canister and your stove inside of it, and then has this handle that pops up in order to lock down the lid. From a performance and weight standpoint, this combination is amazing, and then it's also one of the most affordable options out there at under $50. Another important piece of gear is rain gear. If you're wet and uncomfortable on a trip, that's gonna really suck. But I'm gonna make a bold claim with rain gear here, and that's that you don't need some fancy membrane that's waterproof, breathable. A lot of the time, that breathability factor is way overstated. And I'm even gonna take this a step further and say that Gore-Tex specifically is a scam. You don't need to be paying $300, $400 for a Gore-Tex rain jacket. My recommendation is the Frog Togs jacket that you can get for $20 on Amazon. It's not breathable, but it's waterproof and it's gonna get the job done. It's also very lightweight, often half the weight of big membrane jackets. If you're gonna be bushwhacking a lot and not on trails, then the Frog Togs might be a little bit too delicate for you. But for a lot of beginner backpackers out there, you're gonna be on established trails and the Frog Togs is gonna get the job done just fine. I've used mine for hundreds of miles and I can honestly not say enough good things about the Frog Togs. I want to touch briefly on footwear and clothing because I know there's probably a lot of questions about those two components, but the one thing you need to know is that it's very individual and you can just use a lot of stuff from home that you might already have. Personally, when I'm hiking, I really like long pants and a sun hoodie because it avoids having to put on a ton of sunscreen and also protects me from getting scratched up by shrubs and trees. For around camp, fleece is really nice for insulation because it's warm for its weight and it doesn't really start getting compromised when it's wet or humid out. Decathlon is probably the best place to get deals on fleece. You can get fleece pants and jackets there for really cheap. And then if you need a little bit of extra insulation, the Decathlon MT100 down jacket is a great option to keep you really warm when you're at camp. The important thing with clothing is not bringing too much. It's really easy to overpack clothing and that's going to add a ton of weight to your pack. Basically just bring your hiking clothing, maybe one extra pair of underwear and socks, and then a few layers for staying warm around camp. For footwear, I personally like trail runners, and I think trail runners will work for 90% of people on most of their trips, but some people are gonna prefer hiking boots. Basically, just find what works for you and what's comfortable. You're also gonna need a bunch of little items like your headlamp, toothbrush, toothpaste. Go check out the PackWizard checklist down in the video description. I'll also have a gear list for all the gear that I recommend for beginner backpackers, including all those Diddy items down there as well. Go check out this video if you want to see me do a 3-day trip with a pack that weighs over 60 pounds. This is not gear that I recommend for beginners, but there's a lot of lessons I learned on this trip that I think are important for beginners to learn as well.